Hello, I'm Erik Wheat, and I want to thank you very much for joining me for another whiskey study. As I only do one whiskey study per week and do wine studies throughout the rest of the week, I really look forward to my whiskey Sundays. In this video, I'll be doing a review and study of two lowland Scotch whiskies from Auchentoshan. It'll be the 12-year-old and the 3-wood. But before getting into these whiskeys, here are my notes on Auchentoshan Distillery. Auchentoshan Distillery is a single malt whiskey distillery in the west of Scotland. The name Auchentoshan is from a Gaelic word which I will not attempt to pronounce, but it translates as the field of the corner. Auchentoshan is located at the foot of the Kilpatrick Hills on the outskirts of Clydebank in West Dunbartonshire near the Erskine Bridge. It is one of 6 malt whiskey distilleries in the Scottish Lowlands, along with Bladnoch, Glenkinchie, and recently Daftmill Distillery, Annandale Distillery, and Isla Bay Distillery. Auchentoshan was built in 1800. After its foundation, it changed hands multiple times and was bought by A.D. Cairns in 1969, who rebuilt it completely. Cairns sold Auchentoshan to Morrison Bowmore Distillers in 1984. Suntory invested in Morrison Bowmore in 1989, and then in 1994 they acquired 100% of its holdings. In May 2014, Beam Incorporated and Suntory Holdings Limited merged to create Beam Suntory Incorporated, who are now the owners of Auchentoshan and other Morrison Bowmore holdings. Auchentoshan Distillery Production. Unusual for a Scottish distillery, Auchentoshan practices triple distillation. Generally, the final stage of Scotch whisky production involves distilling the fermented mash in 2 copper stills. In Auchentoshan, a third still, known as the intermediate still, helps to give a final spirit strength of 81% alcohol by volume, or 162 proof. This triple distillation, in addition to an unpeated malt, gives Auchentoshan a more delicate and sweet flavor than many Scotch whiskies. Maturation is mainly in ex-bourbon barrels and ex-sherry butts, though some Auchentoshans will mature in French wine casks. Alrighty, so our first up is the Auchentoshan 12-year-old. The triple distilled Auchentoshan single malt Scotch whisky 12-year-old is aged in ex-bourbon and ex-oloroso sherry casks and bottled at 40% alcohol by volume. Alright, so the whiskeys I'm sampling are coming from these little minis. Pretty dark. It's like sort of a golden copper in color. Pronounced, intense, and very concentrated aromas. Also seems a little sweet on the nose. Dried stone fruits, apricot, peach, pear. Definitely some caramel, vanilla. Even a little bit of tropical, almost like a black overripe banana. Caramel. A little bit of honey. Spice. Cinnamon. Nutmeg. Cardamom. It's very rich, sweet, because right now I'm just talking about aromas, concentrated and dense aromas with multiple layers, and it's sort of the vanilla that's coming in the back end, and then there's also some sweet caramel corn notes as well. All right, on the palate. One more. Something I've been doing a little differently with my whiskeys. With wines, I tend to let them glide across my palate and fill my mouth on their own, and maybe breathing some air to sort of aerate them. With whiskeys, I've actually been, at least off camera, sort of trying to extract more flavor out of it by almost chewing on it. So I've actually sort of developed a different style of tasting whiskeys, at least off camera. And I find I really like getting, it's like I can sort of peeling back layers of flavor in my mouth. I'm not sucking in air. I've seen a few other reviewers do that. Reason why I'm not breathing in air the way I would with a wine. Breathing in air sort of acts like a carburetor, and it will exaggerate the alcohol character. So when I am reviewing a wine, or if I'm blind tasting a wine, and I'm trying to determine the alcohol level would, of course, in the wine world, alcohol level would then be an indication of the ripeness of the grapes. The more sugar, the more ripeness, the more sugar, the more alcohol, and that would be a reflection of climate. So I actually try to feel a wine, the heat, any warmth, but I've almost become immune to that sort of feature, and so I find breathing in air to sort of figure out the alcohol content in a blind tasting will exaggerate or accentuate the alcohol when blind tasting a wine. But I don't want to do that with a whiskey. I don't want the whiskey to seem extra hot, so I'm not sucking in a bunch of air. But what I do want to do is extract as much flavor as possible. And for a whiskey that's only 40% alcohol by volume, this has a ton of flavor and a lot of layers. I'm really enjoying this. So I've been experimenting with different tasting techniques off camera, and so this is the first time I'm sort of really talking about this. It's got layers of flavor. I like the stone fruit character. It's almost like a dried peach, dried apricot, dried apple. It's got just a little bit of this sort of black banana character to it. Then caramel, vanilla, a little bit of spice, a little bit of cinnamon. Really like this one. It's got a pretty good evolution to it as well. I get most of the stone fruits up front, and then the spice kicks in about the middle, and then the vanilla towards the end. I'm really liking this whiskey, but it's just a little sweet. It's not, I wouldn't say it's a dry whiskey, but it's not quite full on into the dessert category, but it does have a little bit of sweetness to it. I would say it's got for 40%, a nice full body, and a medium to medium plus length finish. It's not a real long finish, but it's medium to medium plus. Alrighty, score-wise, I'm going to give that a solid 89 points. I really like it. All right, on to the next one. The triple distilled Auchentoshan single malt Scotch Whisky 3-wood non-age statement is aged in ex-bourbon, ex-oloroso sherry, and ex-Pedro Jimenez, also known as XPX. It is bottled at 43% alcohol by volume. So our next one is this 3-wood mini, and it looks a little darker than our previous whiskey. It actually has a slight tinge of red to it. It's like a red copper color. All right, on the nose. Let me check the 12 real quick. So I've had this in the glass for about, 20, 30 minutes. Give it a little bit of time to open up. It's not as intensely aromaed as the 12-year-old. I was expecting more. Slightly hotter on the nose. Of course, it's got that additional 3%. The fruit profile is very, very different. Where I was getting stone fruits from the 12, peach, apricot. This, dried black fruits, dates, raisins, fig, dried plum, then a little bit of vanilla and toffee. Hints of spice, cinnamon. There's a woody character to it. Ironic since it's called 3-wood. Vanilla. Maybe some dried floral notes. A minor amount of nuttiness. And some crystallized honey. So if you ever had honey, you're working your way down at the bottom, there's a sort of remnant leftover honey that sort of crystallized that you can't actually get out of the jar. That's sort of what that looks like. All right, on the palate. Wow. That is really different from any other whiskey I've ever had. One more. Just kind of admiring the legs on this one. This is a very deep, rich, concentrated whiskey. And wood is really, 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 really pronounced on this. It's got the plum, fig, date, raisin notes, but I feel like I'm sucking the whiskey through a 2x4. It's very, very, very woody. And then what follows that is some vanilla, that crystallized honey, a little bit of almost like burnt caramel, burnt butterscotch, sort of burnt candied character to it. And on the back end, I get, it's a smokiness, but like a peaty smokiness, it's more like charred wood character to it. I would say, to put into a context, if you're into smoking cigars, I would say this 3-wood is probably more of a cigar wood play. It's drier. It's not as sweet as the 12-year-old, and yet it's very, very, very rich. It doesn't have as much evolution as the 12. What you get up front and what you get in the middle and the finish is fairly similar. So there's not a whole lot of change to it. So I don't find it as having as much complexity. And I also find that the intense woodiness of the whiskey is a bit much. It's all right, but I definitely like the 12 more than this 3-wood. Mostly because of its range of flavors, its intensity, its evolution, and complexity. So I think there's actually a lot more going on to the 12-year-old, and yet it's only 40% versus this 3-wood being at 43%. But I could also see this 3-wood, I'm just curious how it might pair with desserts, chocolates, and stuff like that, caramels. It might actually do fairly well. Alrighty, that's it for this study. If you've subscribed to my channel, I want to thank you very much. If you haven't yet subscribed, but you like watching my videos, give it a thumbs up. And if you have any comments, questions, I'll leave them down below. And as always, I've been trying to remain fairly consistent on doing a live show on Sunday afternoons, early evenings, Pacific time. I haven't got an exact time set yet. I'm going to be trying to do it 3 o'clock. I'm trying not to be going live at the same time as other broadcasters, such as the Scotch Test Dummies and others. All right, that's it for this review. Until next time, cheers.